Good evening. Tyler Talks Wrestling posed 20 questions to his wrestling fans, and I thought I'd chime in with my answers. Question number 1 is, how did you get into wrestling, and when did you start watching it? Well, I started watching ECW probably around 96 or 97. I'd watched that religiously until it went off the air. I never really watched WWF or WCW until probably around 99. I would tune into WWF, and I could say I happened into it accidentally. Some friends of mine and I would get together and we would network our computers. Well, we would go over to this one guy who had a black box, and we'd go over every Sunday, and every once in a while there would be a pay-per-view on, so we'd sit down and watch it when we weren't playing each other. So I'd watch a match here and there, or I'd turn my head when I was playing and pay attention more to what was going on in the pay-per-view than the game. And I found myself liking some of the wrestlers that were being featured. So I started watching the TV shows, and from there it just took off. I started watching all the time. I never really got into WCW, and by the time I was really hardcore into watching wrestling, they had folded. They had been bought out by McMahon. Question number 2 is, who's your favorite wrestler or wrestlers of all time? I probably am going to say Chris Jericho. He's probably not the most famous wrestler or well-liked by everyone, but I think he's the total package. He just oozes charisma. He's more than competent in the ring, and you can either love him or hate him. He has the ability to play both a heel and a face, and sometimes at the same time. If you had asked me a couple years ago who my favorite wrestler was, I would have said Chris Benoit, but we know why I'm not going to say that anymore. Question number 3 is, what is the worst gimmick or gimmicks in the history of wrestling? There's a ton of horrible gimmicks. Wrestling is just full of people who have, and I don't necessarily blame the people that have been given these gimmicks, but some of them have just been, what the hell were these people thinking when they came up with this idea? And honestly, I can't really think of anything right now, so I'm going to take something that's happened pretty recently. I've hated the gimmicks they've given to Jillian Hall. First, she came in as JBL's image consultant, and she had this big thing on the side of her face, and you knew it wasn't real. It was just stupid. It was... I really don't understand why they decided to do that. And now they have the gimmick where she sings horribly, and it's a parody of, I think, Brooke Hogan or something. It's just stupid. It's if she can't wrestle, get her off the TV. If she can wrestle, let her cut promos. But if she has no ability, no amount of eye candy is going to justify her appearance on television. Question number 4 was, what was your favorite era in the WWF? Well, I missed most of the Attitude Era. I didn't come in until, I think it was just ending, really. My favorite was when I got into the WWF, right around 2000, I think. Just, there was a whole stream of new talent coming in. You had Chris Jericho, you had Chris Benoit, you had Dean Malenko, you had Eddie Guerrero. And just watching all of these ex-WCW talents interact with the pre-established stars was interesting, and it helped make these new guys stars in themselves, and it's kind of sad because you don't really get that anymore. And I think that's something that the WWE really needs to take another look at and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And truth be told, they're starting to do it, but they said the same thing last year, and nothing came of it. So, this year, get to work, WWE! Question number 5 is, through the years of watching wrestling, what has been your all-time favorite wrestling promotion? My heart and soul belongs to ECW, I gotta say. Paul Heyman took a ragtag bunch of wrestlers that other people said were not important, and he fashioned pretty engaging television around it. It seems like he had a simple theory. Let the wrestlers talk, and if they can't talk on the mic, let them talk in the ring. And from what I've read about him and the company, his booking methods were really haphazard. I mean, it's really amazing that he was able to put on a good show, and I think the reason why was because he had competent talent, and he knew how to utilize that talent for maximum effect. He may have been a crappy businessman, but he knew how to put on a good show. So question number 6 is, during the Monday Night Wars, who do you think had the better product, WWF or WCW, and explain why? Well, I wasn't watching when the Monday Night Wars were going on, so I can't really make a decision there. Looking back on it now, I can say that both shows had good and bad points to them, but I would say that while WCW started out really well, they got a little too big for their britches and was eventually outshined by the WWF. Question number 7 is, what are some of your most memorable wrestling moments? I'd say the first one was Jericho's first appearance in the WWF. The whole counting down to this new person that would appear was really interesting, and it was really engaging. And the whole banner back and forth between him and The Rock, it just made for really great television. Another memorable moment was when Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit won both titles in rapid succession. It was just great to see these wrestlers who I knew were worthy of titles get what they deserved and become main event stars. Question number 8. In your opinion, who is the most popular wrestler of all time? I think it's pretty obvious. The person is Ric Flair. He's been wrestling forever, over 30 years. And he's rarely lost a step. The last few years of his career were painful to watch, but he's the man, and you know what he'd say about being the man. I've seen his appearance in Ring of Honor recently, and there's speculation that he might come back to wrestling, and I really hope he doesn't. I love him to death, but he needs to know when to hang the boots up. Question number 9 is, who do you believe is the most underrated wrestler of all time? For WWF, I would probably say Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig. It's a shame that he never won a world title while he was with the WWF, and I think he was really underutilized during his time in WCW. For WCW, Bret Hart was the most underrated wrestler. They really shouldn't have had him unofficially join the NWO. It was just a mistake. I really think turning him a heel was dropping the ball with what they could have done with him. And it's a shame he never had a real decent run with the world title. Question number 10 is, who do you believe is the most overrated wrestler of all time? I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but I'm going to say that Hulk Hogan is the most overrated wrestler of all time. I just don't really see the appeal to him. Most of wrestling fans were probably young when they started watching, so they've grown up idolizing him. But I was in my 20s when I started watching, so I bypassed all of the stuff that he was involved in. So I can't see why they were really impressed with the say your prayers and take your vitamins, because that just doesn't really work in real life. Question number 11 is, which wrestler has the most charisma, talent, and ability in your years of watching wrestling? There are 4 simple words that answer this question. Stone Cold Steve Austin. He had everything. He had the charisma, he had the talent, he had the ability to wow the crowd, and I've seen very few bad Steve Austin matches.